I went to the royal masquerade to save my relationship with a kiss. But in the dark, on a frozen balcony, I didn't kiss my boyfriend. I kissed the cursed Alpha King, and when he growled mine against my lips, I realized I hadn't just stolen a kiss. I had stolen a death sentence. Chapter 1. The cheap lace of the mask itched against her skin like 1,000 tiny spider legs. Kessara Vance stared into the cracked mirror above her bathroom sink, trying to find the girl she was supposed to be. But all she saw was fear. Her hands shook. Not a little tremble, but a violent quake that rattled the plastic hairbrush she was holding. She was going to throw up. "You can do this, Kess?" She whispered the words, but they sounded hollow in the cramped, cold apartment. Just walk up to him. Kiss him. Make him remember why he loves you. She didn't believe it. Her inner wolf let out a pathetic whimper, curling into a tight ball in the back of her mind. Even her wolf knew this was a bad idea. 2 years. She had given Liam 2 years of her life. She had cooked his meals, cleaned his messes, and listened to his constant complaints about how the world didn't respect him. She was an Omega. It was in her blood to nurture, to smooth things over, to be soft, but lately, Liam didn't want soft. He wanted space. Tonight was her last chance. The royal masquerade. He had told her to come. He told her to find the man in the golden lion mask on the east balcony at midnight. "It's a game," he had said, his voice smooth and breezy. "A roleplay. Surprise me, Kess. Show me you have some fire." Fire. She didn't have fire. She was just warm, quiet, boring. She pulled the golden hair tie from her wrist. Her blonde waves fell around her face, framing the terror in her blue eyes. She looked like a sacrifice dressed up for the altar. Deep down, she felt like one. "He loves me," she told the mirror. "He just needs a push." But the reflection didn't lie. It showed a girl who was terrified of being alone. A girl who thought her only value was in being chosen by someone else. Anyone else. She smoothed down the front of her second hand gown. It was blue, the color of summer sky. It was pretty, but the fabric was thin. It wouldn't stop the chill of the palace air. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was just bad luck, but the strap of her left heel snapped as she took a step. "No," she gasped, dropping to her knees. Tears pricked her eyes, hot and stinging. It felt like the universe was screaming at her to stay home, to stay safe, to forget the golden lion and the balcony and the stupid, desperate plan to propose to a man who barely looked at her anymore. But then, she thought of the empty apartment, the silence that waited for her here, the crushing weight of being nobody. She grabbed a tube of superglue from under the sink. Her fingers were sticky and clumsy. She jammed the strap back into place, holding it until the chemical smell burned her nose. "I am not weak," she lied to herself. Her wolf didn't answer. It just hid deeper in the shadows of her soul. Eventually, the glue held. Kessara stood up. She put the mask back on. It covered the fear in her eyes, but it couldn't hide the trembling of her lips. She grabbed her purse. She walked to the door. She didn't look back at the sad, lonely apartment. She was going to the palace. She was going to find the golden lion. And she let it happen. She let hope drag her out into the dark, unaware that she was walking straight into the jaws of a monster, far more dangerous than a drifting boyfriend.
The cold wasn't just around him. It was in him. King Drakos Valerian sat on the obsidian throne, a statue carved from winter itself. He didn't move. He barely blinked. Every breath he took left a cloud of frost in the air, a visible warning to anyone stupid enough to come close. No one did. The ballroom below was a sea of color and noise. hundreds of wolves, shifters from every pack in the kingdom, dancing and laughing and sweating in the heat of the celebration. But around the throne, there was a 20-foot circle of absolute silence, a dead zone. It was lonely. God, it was so lonely it felt like his bones were being ground to dust. He could hear the whisper of ice forming on the rim of his wine goblet. Snap, crackle, freeze. The red liquid turned to solid slush in his hand. He stared at it, feeling nothing but a dull, aching exhaustion. 30 years. That's how long the curse had gripped him. The frost witch had laughed when she cast it. You will have the strength of the mountain, she had cackled. But you will never feel the warmth of a living touch. If you do, you will destroy it. She was right. He was strong. He was the Alpha King. He could crush boulders with his fist and freeze a river with a glare. But he couldn't hold a woman's hand without giving her frostbite. He couldn't kiss without stopping a heart, so he sat alone. Beneath his skin, his alpha wolf paced. It was a massive, angry beast. It clawed at his ribs, growling low and deep. It wanted to hunt. It wanted to run. Most of all, it wanted a mate. Quiet, Drakos murmured. His voice was like grinding stones. The sound terrified the guard standing nearest to him. The man flinched, taking a step back. Drakos saw it. He saw the fear in the man's eyes. He smelled it. They couldn't see a king. They saw a monster. Even so, he stayed. Duty demanded he show his face at the masquerade. He had to remind them that he was still watching, still ruling, still dangerous. He scanned the crowd. Faceless masks. Meaningless laughter. It was all so fake. Suddenly, a strange scent hit him. It wasn't perfume. It wasn't the musk of other wolves. It was vanilla, and something else. Something like sunlight on fresh snow. His wolf stopped pacing. Its ears perked up. There the beast whispered in his mind. Something warm. Drakos frowned behind his golden lion mask. He leaned forward, just an inch. The movement caused the ice on his throne to crack loudly. The sound echoed through the hall, cutting through the music. He ignored it. He followed that scent. It was weak, faint, buried under the smell of cheap wine and fear. But it was there. Whatever it was calling to him. It pulled at the ice in his chest like a hook. Your Majesty. A servant squeaked, brave enough to approach with a tray of fresh wine. Drakos didn't look at the man. He stood up. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The music faltered. Dancers stopped, looking up at the dais in terror. I need air, Drakos growled. Without another word, he turned and stalked toward the balcony doors. The east balcony. It was the only place where the wind was strong enough to numb the burning ache of his isolation. He didn't know why he felt so restless tonight. He didn't know why his skin felt too tight, or why his wolf was howling for blood. Maybe it was fate, or maybe the universe was finally tired of his frozen silence. He walked into the shadows of the balcony, the golden lion mask hiding the predator beneath. He waited. For what? He didn't know. But he was about to find out.
Midnight. The clock tower chimed, the sound vibrating through the stone floor beneath Kessara's feet. Bong, bong, bong. She was running out of time. She rushed through the glass doors onto the east balcony. The air hit her like a slap. It was freezing out here. The wind whipped her thin dress around her legs, biting into her skin. Liam, she whispered. Her voice trembled. The balcony was dark. Shadows clung to the corners, thick and heavy. For a second, she thought he wasn't there. Panic seized her throat. Had he left? Had she missed him? Was this it? Was it over? But then, she saw him. A massive figure stood near the stone railing. He was huge. Broader than she remembered. Taller. He was facing away from her, looking out at the snow-covered gardens. But on his head, glinting in the moonlight, was the mask. The golden lion. Relief flooded her chest so fast it made her dizzy. He came. He was waiting. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a trapped bird. This was it. The moment she fixed everything. The moment she proved she was bold enough, wild enough, for him. She didn't let herself think. If she thought about it, she would freeze. She would turn around and run back to her safe, sad life. Instead, she moved. Her body moved on instinct. She rushed across the cold stone. Her heels clicked sharply, but the wind swallowed the sound. The man didn't turn. He seemed lost in thought. "I'm here," she breathed. Without warning, she launched herself at him. She didn't give him a chance to speak. She didn't wait for him to turn around. She wrapped her arms around his thick neck, standing on her tiptoes and pressed her body against his back. He went rigid, like stone. She didn't stop. She spun him around, her hands tangled in the velvet of his coat. She pulled his head down, and she kissed him. She kissed him with every ounce of desperation she had. She poured all her fear, all her hope, all her love into that kiss. In the span of a breath, the world exploded. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a collision. Her lips touched his, and a shockwave of pure energy slammed into her. It wasn't warm. It wasn't cold. It was electric. It tasted like ozone and storm clouds. It zapped her tongue, burned her lips, and shot straight down her spine. The man didn't pull away. He froze. Absolutely froze. Then, a sound rumbled in his chest, a growl. It wasn't Liam's voice. It was deeper, darker. It sounded like a landslide. His hands came up, gripping her waist. His fingers dug into her flesh with bruising force. He didn't push her away. He held her there, anchored her. Heat, blistering, impossible heat, roared between them. Kessara gasped against his mouth, her eyes flying open. This wasn't Liam. Liam felt like safety. This man felt like a natural disaster. Before the words left her lips, the glass doors behind them shattered. Srass! Shards of glass rained down on the stone. The wind roared, sucking the air out of her lungs. The energy between them pulsed. Violent and wild, pushing everything else away. She pulled back, breathless, her lips throbbing. She looked up. The golden lion mask stared down at her. But behind the eye slits, she saw gold, molten, glowing gold, not human eyes, wolf eyes. And they were looking at her like she was the only meal he had seen in 1,000 years. "Mine," he growled. The word wasn't spoken. It was vibrated into her very bones. Fear, cold and sharp, finally pierced the haze of the kiss. Kessara stumbled back. Her hands flew to her mouth. What had she done? Who was this? And why? Even now, with the glass shattered and the monster growling, did her soul feel like it had finally come home?
Fire. It wasn't a metaphor. It wasn't a dream. It was agony. King Drakos Valyrian didn't just feel the kiss, he survived it. For 30 years, his body had been a tomb, cold.
Numb dead?
But the moment those soft, trembling lips smashed against his, the tomb cracked open. It hurt. God, it hurt. It felt like someone had shoved a torch into a block of ice. Steam hissed in his throat. His blood, usually sluggish and thick, turned into liquid magma. It roared through his veins. Thump. Thump. His heart, he hadn't felt his heart beat in decades. Mine? His wolf snarled. The beast clawed at the inside of his chest, desperate to get closer to the source of the heat. Drakos lost control. He didn't mean to grab her. He didn't mean to bruise her. But his hands moved on instinct. They clamped onto her waist like iron bands. He needed to anchor himself. If he let go, he would shatter. She tasted like vanilla and terror. She tasted like life. But then the magic backlash hit them. Boom! The shockwave didn't push them apart. It slammed them together. The balcony doors behind them exploded into 1,000,000 diamonds of glass. Don't move, he gritted out. His voice was a wreck. Gravel and smoke. He tried to open his eyes. His vision blurred. Gold spots danced in the dark. He looked down at the creature in his arms. She was small, fragile. A tiny bird caught in a hurricane. Her eyes were wide, blue as a summer lake, and filled with total panic. She wasn't an assassin. She wasn't a courtier. She was a mistake. A beautiful burning mistake. As the silence stretched, he realized something terrifying. The cold was coming back. The kiss ended. She pulled away, gasping for air. And the moment her skin left his, the winter rushed back in. It was worse than before. It wasn't just cold now. It was empty. No, he whispered. He reached for her. He had to touch her again. He had to stop the shivering that was already starting in his fingers. Without warning, the scent of another wolf hit him. A male, a weak, pathetic beta male scent. Cheap cologne and sweat. Drakos looked up. His golden lion mask was still in place, but his eyes burned through the slits. A man was standing in the doorway, stepping over the broken glass, and he wasn't alone. He was holding hands with a redhead. The girl in Drakos' arms went stiff. She stopped breathing. Drakos felt her heart skip a beat, then another. The heat radiating off her turned sharp. Painful. She wasn't looking at him anymore. She was looking at the intruder. Lamb, she whispered. The name was a knife. A tiny, rusty knife that stabbed right into Drakos' pride. She hadn't kissed the king. She hadn't kissed the man. She had kissed a mask, thinking it was him, this weak, cheating boy. Fury hot and sudden, mixed with the ice in his gut. He wanted to rip the man apart. He wanted to freeze the blood in his veins. But more than that, he wanted the girl to look back at him. Look at me, Drakos commanded. The girl turned. Her face was pale. She looked from the boy to Drakos, and then at the hand Drakos still had on her hip. She didn't know. She didn't know she was holding a monster. So, he showed her. Slowly, deliberately, Drakos reached up. He unclasped the golden lion mask. It fell to the stone floor with a heavy clatter. He let the moonlight hit his face. The scars, the unnatural pallor, the eyes that glowed like molten gold. The girl's breath hitched. A sound of pure horror escaped her throat. The king, she breathed. She knew the legends. Everyone did. The Ice King. The cursed Alpha. Touch him and die. She scrambled back. Her hands shook. She looked at her own lips, as if expecting them to turn black and fall off. Wait, Drakos stepped forward. But fear was faster than a king. Without thinking, she turned. She didn't curtsy. She didn't beg for mercy. She bolted. She hopped over the railing, dropping into the snow-covered hedges below. She ran like a deer who had just realized she was in a wolf's den. Drakos stood frozen on the balcony. His hand was still reached out, grasping at empty, freezing air. The heat was gone. The girl was gone. And for the first time in 30 years, Drakos felt something worse than the curse. He felt abandoned.
Run. The word pounded in her head. Run, run, run. Kessara didn't feel the snow soaking into her thin shoes. She didn't feel the branches scratching her bare arms as she tore through the palace gardens. She only felt the phantom burn on her lips. I kissed the king. I kissed the king. I kissed the king. It wasn't possible. It was a nightmare. A hallucination. But the memory was too vivid. The way his body felt like a wall of granite. The way his growl vibrated in her teeth. The way his eyes, those terrifying golden eyes, looked at her like he wanted to devour her soul. And Liam. The image of Liam flashed in her mind. Standing there, holding that woman's hand. The redhead from accounting. He had set her up. Meet me on the balcony, he had said. Wear the mask. He wasn't planning to propose. He was planning to break up with her. Or maybe, he just forgot she existed. Tears blurred her vision. Hot, angry tears. She couldn't stop thinking about the king. King Drakos. The monster. The man who supposedly froze his own parents. The man who executed people for looking him in the eye. She had assaulted him. Technically, it was treason. Stupid, 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 she hissed, ducking behind a large stone fountain. Her breath came in ragged gasps. She pressed her hand to her chest. Her heart was beating so fast it hurt. But underneath the panic, there was something else. A strange, tingling sensation. It started in her lips. Then it spread to her jaw, then down her neck. It wasn't cold. It wasn't the ice curse. It was warm. No, not warm. It was hot. Fever hot. She looked at her hands. In the moonlight, her veins looked darker. Bluer. They pulsed with a rhythm that wasn't hers. Thump, thump, thump. It felt heavy, like she was carrying an extra weight in her blood. Maybe it was fate, punishing her for being so desperate. I need to leave, she whispered. I need to get out before he finds me. She peeked around the fountain. The palace was chaos. Guards were running toward the east balcony. She could hear shouting. Lock the gates! Someone screamed. Seal the perimeter! Her stomach dropped. He was hunting her. She looked down at her dress. It was blue. Bright blue. It stood out against the snow like a neon sign. She had to blend in. She ripped the lace mask off her face and stuffed it into a bush. She kicked off her broken heels. The snow bit into her bare feet, numbing them instantly. Better numb than dead. She kept to the shadows. She moved like a ghost. Being an Omega had taught her one thing: how to be invisible. How to disappear when the Alphas were angry. She reached the servants' entrance near the kitchens. It was unguarded. She slipped inside. The heat of the kitchen hit her, smelling of roasted meat and yeast. It made her nauseous. She grabbed a heavy gray cloak from a hook near the door. It smelled like onions and old tobacco. She didn't care. She threw it over her blue dress, pulling the hood low. Hey! You, a voice barked from the hallway. Kessara froze. Her blood turned to ice. A guard, bulky a beta with a spear. What are you doing back here? He demanded, squinting at her. Kessara lowered her head. She hunched her shoulders, making herself look smaller. Just taking out the trash, sir. She mumbled. Boss's orders. Her voice shook. It sounded pathetic. The guard snorted. Hurry up then. The king is in a mood. Something happened on the balcony. Some assassin tried to kill him. Assassin. Kessara almost laughed. A hysterical, bubbling laugh. They thought she was an assassin. If only they knew. She wasn't trying to take his life. She was just trying to get a life. Yes, sir. She squeaked. She hurried past him. She walked fast, keeping her head down. She didn't breathe until she was out the side door and into the crowded city streets. She blended into the mob of drunks and revelers. But as she walked away from the palace, the tingling in her blood didn't stop. It got stronger. It felt like a thread. A fishing line hooked into her navel, pulling her back. Every step away from the palace felt like stretching a rubber band. It hurt. It physically ached to create distance between her and the king. Why? She wrapped her arms around herself. She had escaped the guards. She had escaped the palace. But deep down, her wolf let out a low, mournful howl. Kessara knew the terrifying truth. She might have run away, but she hadn't escaped. Something had happened on that balcony. Something that couldn't be undone. She was marked.
Pain. It wasn't a sharp pain anymore. It was a dull, throbbing ache that covered every inch of his skin. Drakos stood in the center of his bedroom. He had ripped off his velvet coat. He had torn open his silk shirt. He stared at his reflection in the tall mirror. His skin, usually the color of marble, was flushed. Patches of red bloomed on his chest, on his neck, on his lips. He touched his mouth. His fingers were trembling. Hot, he whispered, still hot. 30 years of ice. 30 years of being a walking glacier. And one kiss, one stolen, accidental kiss from a tiny slip of a girl, had done what the best healers in the kingdom couldn't. It had melted him. But now, she was gone, and the melt was freezing over again. Jagged crystals of ice began to form on his eyebrows. His breath started to fog the mirror again. No, he roared. He punched the mirror. Shrek! The glass shattered, raining down on the carpet. His knuckles didn't bleed. They just bruised, dark and blue. He needed her back. It wasn't a want. It was a biological imperative. It was like needing air. Like needing water. His wolf was clawing at the back of his throat, screaming for its mate. Find her. Find the heat. Bring her back. The door to his chambers burst open. Your Majesty! It was General Torin, the head of the royal guard, a massive bear of a man, panting heavily. We have secured the east wing, Torin reported, keeping his eyes on the floor. But there is no sign of the assassin. She is not an assassin, Drakos snarled. He turned slowly. The frost was creeping down his arms now, turning his skin white again. Torin looked up and flinched. He saw the ice returning. The woman, sire. We found a mask in the bushes. A cheap lace thing, and footprints leading to the servants' gate. She ran, Drakos said. His voice sounded dead, hollow. She escaped into the city, my king. The crowds are too thick. We lost her scent. Lost her. The words echoed in Drakos' skull. He closed his eyes. He tried to focus on the memory of her taste. Vanilla. Fear-need. He could still feel the imprint of her body against his, the softness of her curves, the way she had fit against him like a puzzle piece he didn't know was missing. He opened his eyes. The gold was swirling, dark and dangerous. Lock it down, Drakos commanded. Torin blinked. Sire, lock down the city? Drakos said. His voice dropped an octave. It was the voice of a predator who had just caught a scent. Close the gates. No one leaves the capital. No one enters. Put guards on every street corner. But the festival. Cancel it, Drakos barked. I don't care if the city burns. I don't care if the people riot. He walked to the window. He looked out at the sprawling city below, thousands of lights twinkling in the dark. Somewhere out there, she was hiding. She thought she could run. She thought she could hide from the winter. But she was wrong. He touched his chest, right over his heart. He could feel a pull, a tug, a faint, magnetic thrum that pointed northwest. The bond. She had initiated a soul bond. She didn't know it, but she had tied herself to him with a knot that couldn't be untied. Find the owner of the mask. Drakos whispered to the glass. Find the girl with the blue dress. He pressed his hand against the cold window pane. Ice spread from his fingertips, frosting over the glass until the city disappeared. I will tear this kingdom apart brick by brick, he vowed. I will freeze the world solid if I have to. A cruel smile touched his lips. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a hungry one. You can run, little thief, he murmured into the silence. But you can't run from the cold. And you certainly can't run from me. He knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of the hunt.
The royal archives smelled like dust and forgotten history. Usually. Kessara loved it here. It was quiet. It was safe. It was the one place where an omega could disappear between the towering shelves of books. But today, it felt like a tomb. Kessara sat at her small wooden desk, huddled inside the oversized gray cloak she had stolen. Her teeth were chattering. Click, click, click. It wasn't just chilly. It was bone, deep freezing. Just a draft, she muttered, rubbing her arms vigorously. The heating system is old. That's all. She was lying to herself. The thermometer on the wall read 70 degrees. It was a perfect, balmy temperature. Yet, frost was beginning to form on the tips of her eyelashes. She looked down at her hand. Her fingernails were turning a pale, translucent blue. Stop it, she hissed. She grabbed a quill, trying to focus on the inventory list in front of her. But her fingers were stiff, clumsy. The quills slipped, splattering black ink across the page like a dark Rorschach test. What is happening to me? She closed her eyes. She tried to reach for her inner wolf, the source of her biological heat. Usually, her wolf was a warm, golden presence in her chest. But now, her wolf was silent, sluggish. It felt like the beast was wading through deep snow, too tired to lift its head. Maybe it was fate punishing her. Or maybe it was the curse. The legends said the Ice King's touch was death. They said he froze everything he loved. But she wasn't loved. She was just a thief who stole a kiss. Did I steal the curse too? The thought made her stomach twist. A wave of nausea so strong hit her, she had to grip the desk to stay upright. The room spun. The shadows between the bookshelves seemed to stretch, reaching for her. She needed to leave. She needed to go home. Crawl under 10 blankets, and pray she didn't turn into an ice sculpture before morning. She started to stand. Creak. The floorboard behind her groaned. Kessara froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. A frantic drumbeat in the silence. She smelled him before she saw him. Cheap cologne, stale sweat, and the sour tang of betrayal. I knew I'd find you here, a voice said. Smooth. Breezy. Liam. She turned slowly. He was leaning against a stack of books, twirling a familiar object in his hand. It was her lace mask. You dropped this, he said, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. Careless, Kess. Very careless. Kessara's breath caught in her throat. She looked at the mask, then at his face. There was no love in his eyes. No worry. Just calculation. Liam, she whispered. I can explain. Explain, he laughed. It was a dry, ugly sound. Explain why you were on the balcony. Or explain why you tackled the king like a bitch in heat. He stepped closer. His eyes narrowed. I saw it, Kess. I saw everything. The kiss. The shockwave. The way he looked at you. He stopped 3 feet away. Close enough for her to smell the greed on him. You're in trouble, he said softly. Big trouble. The king is tearing the city apart looking for you. He's going to execute you. Fear. Sharp and icy, sliced through her. I didn't mean to. Shetch. He held up a hand. I can help you. I can keep your secret. Hope flared in her chest. You will, of course, Liam smiled. But it didn't reach his eyes. For a price. The air in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Price. The king is obsessed? Liam said, his voice low and hungry. He's connected to you now. I can feel the residual magic on you. It makes my skin crawl. He took a step closer. You're going to use that connection. You're going to get close to him. And you're going to get me 5,000 gold credits. Kessara stared at him. She felt the blood drain from her face. Blackmail, she choked out. You're blackmailing me. I prefer to call it severance pay, Liam sneered. Do it. Or I hand this mask to the royal guard right now. In that moment, Kessara realized she had never really known him. She had loved a mask. The real Liam was small, petty, and cruel. She opened her mouth to speak, to scream awe, to tell him to go to hell. But then, the library doors burst open. Boom, wood splintered. Hinges screamed. A wind violent and arctic roared into the room. Papers flew into the air like frightened birds. And there, standing in the wreckage was a shadow made of nightmares and ice.
The city smelled like garbage. King Drakos moved through the streets, his boots crunching on the cobblestones. He wasn't walking. He was hunting. His alpha wolf was in the driver's seat. It pushed against his skin, stretching his muscles, lengthening his strides. His vision was sharpened to a razor's edge. He could see the pulse beating in the neck of a guard 50 yards away. He could hear the whisper of a mother hushing her child behind a locked door. But he couldn't find her. "Where is she?" he growled. The sound wasn't human. It was a subsonic rumble that made the street lamps flicker. He had torn through the guest list. He had interrogated every noble who wore a blue dress. Nothing. Just fear. Just lies. Meanwhile, the heat in his blood was driving him insane. It was a fever. A fire that wouldn't go out. It burned under his skin, making him itch, making him sweat. But the moment he stopped moving, the ice returned. It crept up his legs like paralysis. He was caught between two extremes. Fire and death. "Sire!" General Torin ran up to him, was struggling to keep pace. The big man was pale. "We have a report," Torin panted. "A disturbance in the royal archives. A guard says he saw a woman in a gray cloak sneak in. And..." Drakos stopped. He turned his head. He sniffed the air. At first, there was nothing but the smell of the city. Smoke. Horses. Unwashed bodies. But then, underneath it all, a thin ribbon of scent. Vanilla. And terror. Mine, his wolf roared. The scent wasn't just a smell. It was a GPS signal. It tugged at his navel, hard. She was there. "The archives," Drakos said. "Yes, sire." "Shall I send a squad too?" "No." Drakos didn't wait. He didn't explain. He launched himself forward. He didn't run like a man. He ran like a beast. He vaulted over a merchant's cart. He sprinted down the alleyway, cutting the distance in half. As he got closer, the scent changed. It wasn't just vanilla anymore. It was tainted. He smelled something else. Something sour. Something rotten. Male. Someone was with her. Rage, pure and black, exploded in his chest. Touch her and die. Touch her and die. The thought looped in his brain like a war drum. He reached the heavy oak doors of the archives. He didn't slow down. He didn't knock. He channeled the ice into his shoulder. He channeled the fire into his legs. He hit the doors with the force of a battering ram. The wood exploded inward. Splinters rained down like confetti. Drakos stepped into the room. The air swirled around him, a blizzard of his own making. He scanned the room. Rows of books. Dust motes dancing in the light. And there, in the corner, a small figure huddled in a gray cloak, shaking, blue lips, terrified eyes, and standing over her, holding a lace mask, was the boy, the ex, the cheater. Drakos saw the way the boy was leaning over her, threatening her. The world narrowed to a single point. The boy's heart. Drakos didn't speak. He didn't need to. He let his wolf surface. A low, vibrating growl filled the room. It shook the books on the shelves. It rattled the windows. The boy turned. His arrogant smirk vanished. His face went white. "Get away." "Her." Drakos didn't shout. He whispered. But the whisper carried the weight of an executioner's blade. The boy didn't just step back. He fell. He scrambled backward, tripping over his own feet. Your Majesty!" Liam squeaked. Drakos ignored him. He looked at the girl. She looked sick. She looked like she was freezing to death. And for the first time, Drakos realized the terrifying truth. The kiss hadn't just broken him. It was breaking her.
The room was suddenly too small. Kessara pressed her back against the bookshelf. The wood dug into her spine. On one side, Liam, groveling on the floor like a coward. On the other, the king. He was terrifying. The broken doors framed him like a portrait of destruction. His chest was heaving. His clothes were disheveled. His golden eyes were burning with a light that seemed to suck the oxygen out of the air. "Mine?" He snarled. He wasn't looking at Liam. He was looking at her. The intensity of his gaze was a physical weight. It pinned her to the shelf. She should be running. She should be terrified. But instead, her body betrayed her. As soon as he stepped into the room, the cold inside her receded. Just a little. The proximity of him. The sheer heat radiating off his massive frame acted like a furnace. Her wolf, which had been dying moments ago, lifted its head. "Mate," it whispered. "Safe, safe." Was she insane? I didn't mean to. Kessara stammered. Her voice was a broken whisper. Drakos took a step toward her. Liam scrambled up. "Sire! She's the one! She's the assassin! Look, I have the mask!" "I was just holding her for you," Kessara gasped. The betrayal stung like a slap. "Liam!" Drakos stopped. He turned his head slowly, like a tank turret rotating. He looked down at Liam. "You were holding her?" Drakos asked. His voice was deceptively calm, soft, deadly. "Yes. Yes!" Liam nodded frantically, holding up the lace mask. "She told me everything. She planned it. She's a traitor." Drakos looked at the mask. Then he looked at Liam's hand holding it. "You made her cry," Drakos said. It wasn't a question. It was an observation. What? Liam blinked. "I can smell it," Drakos said. He took another step. Salt, fear, grief. He tilted his head. "You smell like a bully." Without warning, Drakos moved. It was a blur. 1 second he was standing there. The next, he had Liam by the throat. He lifted the man off the ground with one hand. Liam's feet dangled, kicking uselessly. "You threatened what is mine," Drakos growled. Ice began to spread from Drakos' hand. It crept up Liam's neck. Crackle. Snap. Liam's eyes bulged. He clawed at the king's hand, but it was like clawing at granite. "Drakos!" Kessara screamed. The name left her lips before she could stop it. "Not my king. Not your majesty." "Drakos." The king froze. He didn't drop Liam. But he turned back to her. His golden eyes locked onto hers. "Please," she whispered. She stepped away from the shelf. She was trembling, but not from cold anymore. "Don't kill him. He's not worth it." Drakos stared at her. His chest rose and fell. He looked from her to the gasping man in his hand. With a sneer of disgust, he threw Liam. He didn't just drop him. He tossed him like a rag doll. Liam flew across the room, crashing into a stack of encyclopedias. He groaned, then went still. Drakos didn't look back. He closed the distance between him and Kessara in 2 strides. He towered over her. He smelled like winter air and ozone. "You ran," he accused. His voice was rough, hurt. "I was scared," Kessara admitted. She looked up at him, unable to look away. "You're the Ice King. You kill people." "I have never killed anyone who didn't deserve it," he gritted out. He reached out. His hand hovered near her face. He seemed afraid to touch her. "You're cold," he noted. He could see the frost on her lashes, the blue tint of her lips. I don't know what's happening," she whispered. Tears welled in her eyes. "Ever since the balcony. I can't get warm. It hurts, Drakos. It hurts so much." Pain flashed across his face. Real, human pain. "I know," he murmured. And she let it happen. He cupped her face. His hands were large, rough, and impossibly hot. The moment his skin touched hers, a jolt of pleasure shot through her. The ice in her veins melted instantly. The shivers stopped. Her knees buckled. "I caught you," he whispered. He wrapped his arms around her. Pulling her into the hard wall of his chest, he buried his face in her neck, inhaling deeply. "Mine," he growled against her skin. Kessara closed her eyes. She gripped his shirt. She knew she should be afraid. She knew this was dangerous. But for the first time in hours, she was warm. "Yes." She whispered back, surrendering to the heat. "Yours." She didn't see the look on his face. She didn't see the terror in his golden eyes as he looked at her arm, where the blue veins were already starting to pulse again. He held her tight, but deep down, The king knew. He had caught her. But he hadn't saved her. In fact, he might have just doomed her.
She was too light. King Drakos strode through the marble corridors of the palace, holding Kessara against his chest. She weighed nothing. It felt like carrying a bird made of hollow bones and feathers. Guards scrambled out of his way. Servants pressed themselves against the walls, eyes wide with terror. They had never seen their king like this, disheveled, wild-eyed, burning. Clear the hall. General Torin barked ahead of him. Drakos didn't hear them. His entire world had narrowed down to the small, shivering woman in his arms. He could feel the cold radiating off her. It was wrong. It was unnatural. It seeped through his shirt, chilling his skin even as his own blood boiled with the heat of the bond. "Stay with me," he growled. He kicked open the double doors to the royal wing. Panic ensued. He laid her down on the massive bed. The silk sheets were black, making her pale skin look like porcelain. Her lips were blue. Her breathing was shallow, ragged, like she was fighting for every gasp of air. "Healer," Drakos roared.
"Get the shaman."
"Now." The guards scrambled to obey. Drakos knelt beside the bed. He grabbed her hands. They were ice blocks. He tried to push his warmth into her. He focused on the fire in his own blood, the alpha heat that usually terrified people. He poured it into her palms. "Take it," he commanded silently. "Take the heat." For a moment, it seemed to work. Color returned to her cheeks. Her eyelids fluttered. She let out a soft sigh, arching into his touch. "Drakos," she whispered. The sound of his name on her lips was the sweetest thing he had ever heard. It hit him harder than the whiskey he used to drink to numb the loneliness. "I'm here," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I've got you, little thief." A surge of possessiveness so strong hit him it made his vision swim. She was his. The bond sang in his blood. She was the one who broke the curse. She was the queen he had stopped hoping for. He reached into his pocket. His fingers brushed against the cool metal of the bonding necklace. It was an ancient heirloom, white gold and moonstones. He had carried it for 10 years, a symbol of a hope he thought was dead. Now, he had someone to wear it. "You're safe," he promised. "You're never leaving this room again." He leaned down. He brushed a stray hair from her forehead. His skin sizzled against hers. But then, he felt a tremor run through her body. It wasn't a shiver of cold. It was a convulsion. Her eyes snapped open. But they weren't blue anymore. They were clouded. White, like a frozen lake. "Drakos," she gasped. But it wasn't a plea. It was a warning. Before he could move, the air in the room shifted. The temperature plummeted. The water in the vase on the nightstand froze instantly, shattering the porcelain. Crack. Drakos pulled back, confused. "Kessara." She didn't answer. She screamed, and she let it happen. The cold inside her exploded outward, knocking the king of winter to his knees.
The fire was eating her alive. Kessara woke up in a bed that felt like a cloud. But her body felt like it was being torn apart. 1 second. She was warm. Drakos was holding her hands. She felt safe. She felt loved. But then, the warmth turned sharp. It felt like swallowing razor blades. Every heartbeat sent a spike of agony through her veins. It started in her chest and shot out to her fingertips. "Too much," her wolf whimpered. "It's too much heat." She tried to pull her hands away from Drakos. But she couldn't move. Her muscles were locked. She looked up at him. He looked like a god. Worried. Intense. Beautiful. He was trying to save her. He was trying to share his fire. He didn't know he was feeding the poison. "You're safe," he said. He pulled a necklace from his pocket. It glittered in the candlelight. "This will bind us," he murmured. "Officially." No, she wanted to scream. No bind. No more magic. But her voice was frozen in her throat. His hand moved toward her neck. The moment the silver chain touched her skin, the world tilted. It wasn't a spark. It was a blizzard. The magic in the necklace clashed with the curse in her blood. Snap. Something inside her ribcage broke. She screamed. The sound tore from her throat, raw and terrifying. Suddenly, the heat vanished. It was replaced by a cold so absolute it burned. Frost exploded from her skin. It raced down the bedsheets, turning the black silk white. It coated the pillows. It coated the floor. Kessara, Drakos shouted. He reached for her. Don't, she tried to yell. But when he touched her shoulder, his hand stuck. Her skin was so cold it adhered to his flesh like dry ice. He hissed in pain, yanking his hand back. He looked at his palm. It was red, burned by her cold. She was freezing him. I can't stop it, she sobbed. Her tears turned to ice crystals before they hit the pillow. Clink, clink. Her legs went numb. She couldn't feel her toes. The paralysis was creeping up. She looked at the ceiling. Frost was spreading across the plaster, like a spider web, growing faster and faster. The windows frosted over. The candles flickered and died, snuffed out by the sudden lack of oxygen. She was the epicenter of a winter storm. Drakos, she whispered. Her lips felt stiff. Help me. But for the first time, the Ice King looked helpless. He stood there, clutching his burned hand, staring at the woman he loved turning into a statue. Kessara realized the terrifying truth. The kiss didn't break the curse. It didn't destroy the monster. It just made her the monster instead.
The room was 20 degrees below zero. Drakos stood by the fireplace, which was roaring with a magical fire he had summoned. But the heat couldn't cross the room. The bed was an island of ice. Kessara lay in the center of it. She was unconscious now. Her skin was pale blue. Her hair was frosted white. She looked like a corpse preserved in a glacier. Fix her, Drakos snarled. He didn't look at the old man hunched over the bed. He couldn't. The royal shaman, an elder wolf with eyes like milky glass, ran his withered hands over the air above Kessara's body. He shook a rattle made of bird bones. Cheech. The sound grated on Drakos's nerves. I am trying, my king, the shaman croaked. But this is old magic. Ultima magic. I don't care how old it is. Drakos snapped. He paced the room. His boots left wet prints on the frosted floor. She kissed me. The curse should be broken. That's the legend. A kiss of true passion melts the ice. Legends are stories for children. The shaman muttered. The old man straightened up. He looked at Drakos. His expression was grave, sad. The curse was not broken, sire. Energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred. Drakos stopped pacing. The air in the room seemed to get heavier. Transferred. You are an alpha, the shaman explained, his voice trembling slightly. You are the strongest wolf in 10 generations. You carried the ice curse for 30 years because your body could withstand the cold. You are a mountain. He pointed a bony finger at the girl on the bed. She is an omega. She is soft. She is light. She cannot carry the mountain. Drakos felt like he had been punched in the gut. So, she's freezing because she took my burden. It is worse than that, the shaman said softly. He walked over to Drakos. He hesitated, then placed a hand on the king's arm. The bond. The shaman whispered. You formed a soul bond on the balcony. A bond is a conduit. A bridge. It allows you to share strength. To share heat.
Yes.
Drakos nodded, desperate. So I can warm her. I can feed her my fire. No. The shaman shook his head. The bridge works both ways. The curse craves the cold. It craves the void. Every time you touch her, every time you pour your love and your heat into her, the curse reacts. It fights back harder. It draws more cold from the ether to extinguish your fire. Drakos stared at him. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. You mean? I mean that your love is the fuel for the fire that is freezing her. The shaman said. The more you love her, the faster she dies. Silence. Absolute suffocating silence. Drakos looked at the bed. At the beautiful, dying girl. He loved her. He knew it now. He loved her courage. He loved her taste. He loved the way she fit in his arms. Because of that, he was killing her. How long? Drakos asked. His voice was broken. If you stay by her side, the shaman sighed, by sunrise, she will be solid ice. She will never wake up. Drakos closed his eyes. A single tear escaped. It didn't freeze. It burned a trail down his cheek. And if I leave? If the bond is severed? The shaman shrugged. If the connection is broken, the magic might stabilize. The curse might return to its original host. Me, Drakos whispered. It comes back to me. Yes, you will be the Ice King again. Alone. Forever. Drakos opened his eyes. The gold was gone. They were dark. Dead. He looked at Kessara one last time. He had waited 30 years to feel warmth. He had held it for less than a night. But he was a king. And kings didn't get happy endings. They made sacrifices. Get out. Drakos commanded the shaman. Sire, get out, and call the guards. Drakos walked to the window. He didn't look at the bed. He couldn't. If he looked at her, he would break. I know what I have to do, he said to the empty night. He had to become the monster again. He had to break her heart so completely that the bond would snap. He had to make her hate him to save her life. And that was a coldness far worse than any curse.
Fire and ice. Kessara woke up to the feeling of her own blood warring against itself. Her veins felt like they were filled with slush, thick and cold. But her skin felt like it was sunburned. She blinked to open her eyes. The room was dark. The only light came from the fireplace, where the flames danced in a strange, green color. Drakos, she whispered. Her voice sounded like cracking glass. He was there, sitting in a chair by the bed. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at his hands. He looked tired, not just sleepy tired. Soul tired. I'm awake. She tried again. She reached out her hand. She wanted to touch him. She needed to touch him. She ignored the pain in her arm. Drakos flinched. He stood up so fast the chair fell over. Bang. Don't, he warned. His voice was low. Rough. Don't touch me. Kessara froze. Her hand hovered in the air. Why was he looking at her like that? Like she was a bomb about to go off? Drakos, please, she begged. I'm cold. I just need you to hold me. No, he said. He took a step back. That's the problem. She sat up. The room spun. She felt weak, like a kitten that hadn't eaten in days. But she forced herself to stay upright. I can handle it, she lied. I'm strong. My wolf is strong. She tried to summon her wolf. She closed her eyes and reached for that inner golden light. But there was nothing. Just a hollow, empty silence. Where are you? She panicked. Her wolf was gone, buried under the ice. Even so, she refused to give up. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed. Her bare feet hit the cold floor. I'm not dying, she insisted. She took a step toward him. Look at me. I'm standing. She wasn't standing. She was swaying. A wave of dizziness so strong hit her she almost fell. Kessara! Drakos shouted. He rushed forward. Instinct. He caught her before she hit the floor. His hands wrapped around her arms. The moment he touched her, it happened. Whoosh. Relief. Pure, ecstatic relief. The heat from his body flooded into hers. It was like drinking hot chocolate on a winter day. It was perfect. She slumped against his chest, sobbing. See, she whispered into his shirt. It works. We fit. We just need to be close. She held on tight. She never wanted to let go. But she didn't see his face. She didn't see the way he was staring at her arm, where his fingers touched her skin. The blue veins weren't fading. They were turning black.
He was killing her. Drakos held the woman he loved in his arms. He smelled her vanilla scent. He felt her soft hair against his chin. and he watched the death spread up her arm. It was physics. It was magic. It was a cruel joke. Every second he held her, he was pouring his energy into a black hole. The curse was feeding on it. It was taking his love and turning it into frost. Let her go, his mind screamed. Never, his heart argued. But then he looked at her face. She was smiling. A small, sleepy smile. She thought she was safe. She didn't know she was 5 minutes away from her heart stopping forever. To make things worse, the shaman's words echoed in his head. The only way to break the bond is to break the connection. Emotionally, physically, you must sever the tie? Sever the tie? Drakos looked at his hands. The hands that had destroyed enemies. The hands that had built a kingdom. Now, those hands had to destroy her hope. If he loved her, she died. If he hated her, she lived. It was the hardest choice of his life. But it wasn't really a choice at all. Suddenly, the decision settled in his chest. It was heavy, cold. He went numb. He shut down the part of his brain that felt joy. He locked away the part of his soul that wanted to kiss her. He summoned the monster. "Get off me," he said. His voice didn't sound like his own. It sounded like the north wind, flat, dead. Kessara stiffened in his arms. "What?" she murmured, confused. Drakos wasn't gentle. He shoved her. He pushed her back onto the bed, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to shock. She landed on the mattress, eyes wide. Drakos. Her voice trembled. "What's wrong?" He stood over her. He made his face a mask. He made his eyes cold. He didn't let a single spark of warmth show. "I said get off," he sneered. "I'm done." He turned his back on her. He walked to the window. He couldn't look at her while he did this. If he looked at her, he would vomit. "Done?" she asked. A small, broken sound. "I don't understand." "Of course you don't," he said, staring at his own reflection in the glass. "You're just an omega. You don't understand how power works." He clenched his fists until his nails dug into his palms. "I needed warmth." He lied. "I used you. You were a battery. A hot water bottle." He took a breath. A shaky, painful breath. "But now," he shrugged, "now you're broken. You're freezing. You're useless to me." Silence. The silence behind him was so loud it hurt his ears. He waited for her to scream. He waited for her to yell. But she didn't. She just made a small, choking sound, like a dying animal. And that sound, that tiny sound of a heart breaking, hurt more than the curse ever had.
The words didn't make sense. Useless. Battery. Done. Kessara sat on the bed. She was shivering again. But this time, it wasn't the magic. It was shock. "You're lying," she whispered. She looked at his back. His broad shoulders were stiff, rigid. "You kissed me?" she said. Her voice got louder. "On the balcony. You held me. You said I was yours." Drakos turned around. His face was blank, empty. The golden eyes that had looked at her with such hunger were now dull. Bored. "I say a lot of things to get what I want," he said smoothly. "That's what kings do." He walked over to the table. He poured himself a drink. He took a sip, looking at her over the rim of the glass. "Look at you," he scoffed. "Do you really think an alpha like me would mate with that? He gestured to her pale skin, her blue veins, her shaking hands. "You're weak, Kessara. You're dying because you're too weak to handle my power." The insult hit her like a slap. Tears welled in her eyes. Hot tears. "I saved you," she cried. "I melted your ice." "You were a momentary distraction," he countered coldly. "And now, you are a liability." In that moment, something inside Kessara cracked. It wasn't her bones. It was her trust. She had believed him. She had believed in the fairy tale. She had believed that the monster could be a prince. But he was just a monster. "I hate you," she whispered. The words tasted like ash. Drakos didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He just nodded. "Good," he said. He set the glass down. He pressed a button on the wall. Buzz. The doors opened. 2 guards marched in. They were wearing thick fur coats and holding thermal spears. "Take her," Drakos commanded. He pointed at Kessara. "Take her where?" "Sire," one guard asked. "The warm cells," Drakos said. "Keep her there until the bond snaps. Then, dump her back in the city." The guards moved forward. They grabbed Kessara's arms. "No," she screamed. She tried to fight. She tried to kick. "Drakos, you can't do this!" She looked at him one last time. She pleaded with her eyes. "Please. Tell me this is a joke. Tell me you love me." But Drakos just turned away. "Get her out of my sight," he said. "She's making the room cold." The guards dragged her out. Her heels dragged on the floor. "I hate you!" she screamed again. Her voice echoed down the hallway. "I wish I never kissed you." The doors slammed shut. Boom. Kessara was gone. But in the empty room, the king didn't celebrate. He fell to his knees. He buried his face in his hands. And for the first time in his life, the Ice King sobbed. He had saved her life. But he knew, with absolute certainty, that he had just destroyed his own.
Silence. The heavy oak doors slammed shut. Boom. The sound echoed in the empty room like a gunshot. She was gone. King Drakos stood there. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. He just stared at the wood grain of the door, waiting for his heart to stop hurting. But it didn't stop. In fact, it hurt worse. A physical collapse followed. His legs gave out. He sank to his knees on the frosted rug. He clawed at his chest, trying to rip out the pain. But he couldn't. Because of that, the ice returned with a vengeance. Crackle. Snap. Hiss. It started at his fingertips. Frost raced up his arms, turning his skin into living marble. The air in the room dropped 50 degrees in a second. The water in the pitcher on the table froze solid, shattering the glass. "I did it," he whispered. His voice was a broken rasp. "I saved her." He tried to tell himself it was a victory. He tried to tell himself that he was a hero. But then, he looked at the bed. The black silk sheets were still rumpled. He could see the indentation of her body. He could smell her scent. Vanilla and tears, lingering in the air. It reminded him of a story his father once told him. A story about a wolf who chewed off his own leg to escape a trap. The wolf survived, but he never ran again. He just limped through the snow, bleeding and alone. Drakos was that wolf. He had chewed off his own heart to save hers. "She will hate me," he told the empty room. "She will survive, and she will hate me." That was the plan. If she hated him, the bond would wither. The magic conduit would snap. The curse would flow back to him, and she would be warm again. Even so, the thought made him want to scream. He crawled toward the bed. He grabbed the pillow she had used. He buried his face in it. It was cold, wet with her frozen tears. "I love you," he groaned into the silk. "I love you so much it kills me." But no one heard him. The room began to darken. The shadows stretched out, swallowing the light. The fire in the hearth turned blue, then died. Drakos lay on the floor. The ice covered his hair. It covered his lashes. It sealed his eyes shut. He welcomed the dark. He welcomed the cold. Because without her, the light was just too painful to look at.
The cell wasn't dark. It wasn't damp. And strangely, it wasn't cold. Kessara lay curled in a ball on the stone floor. Heat, thick and humid, rose from the vents in the floor. These were the warm cells. The prison built for enemies of the Ice King. It should have felt good. But then, she realized something terrible. The heat outside didn't matter. She was freezing from the inside out. "He used me," she sobbed. Her voice was weak, thin. She squeezed her eyes shut. She replayed the scene in the bedroom. The way he looked at her. The way his lip curled in disgust. "You were a battery." It hurt more than the ice in her veins. She had given him everything. She had risked her life. She had fought her own fear. And for what? to be tossed aside like garbage. Maybe it was fate, mocking her for thinking an Omega could be a queen. She looked at her hand. The blue veins were black now. They looked like poison ivy climbing up her skin. Her fingers were stiff. She couldn't make a fist. "I'm going to die here," she whispered. She closed her eyes. She waited for the end. She waited for the cold to stop her heart. She thought about her apartment. She thought about her favorite book. She thought about the way the sun looked hitting the kitchen table. She would never see the sun again. Eventually, the tears stopped. She was too dehydrated to cry. She lay there, numb and empty, broken. But then, a thought scratched at the back of her mind. It was small. It was annoying. But it wouldn't go away. Why did he call the guards? She frowned. If he really didn't care, if he really just wanted to dump her, why put her in the warm cells? Why not the dungeon? Why not the snow? He said I was useless, she muttered. But useless things get thrown away. They don't get put in a specialized, heated room. What's worse? She remembered his eyes. Right before he turned away. Right before he put on that cruel mask, his eyes hadn't been bored. They had been wet. Kessara sat up. It took all her strength. Her bones creaked. Her head spun. He lied, she breathed. The realization hit her like a punch. He didn't hate her. He was terrified for her. He pushed her away because he thought it was the only way to save her. That idiot, she hissed. She wasn't sad anymore. Suddenly, a spark lit up in her chest. It wasn't the bond. It wasn't magic. It was pure, unadulterated female rage. How dare he? How dare he decide for her? How dare he think he could sacrifice his happiness to save her life without asking her first? "I am not a damsel," she growled. Her voice was stronger now. She looked at the door. It was iron, locked, heavy. "I am not dying in this box," she vowed. "And I am not letting him freeze to death alone." She forced herself to stand. Her legs shook. The ice in her blood fought her. It tried to pull her down. "Lie down," the curse whispered. "Sleep." "No," Kessara snarled. She grabbed the bars of the cell door. The metal was warm. She didn't have her wolf. She didn't have magic. But she had something else. Something the Alpha King didn't understand. She had stubbornness. And she let it happen. The anger burned through the ice. It wasn't enough to cure her. But it was enough to keep her standing. She was going to get out of here. She was going to find him. And then, she was going to punch him in his perfect, stupid face.
Time had lost its meaning. Drakos sat on the ice throne. The ballroom below was empty. The party was over. The guests had fled hours ago. Now, it was just him and the silence. He waited. He waited for the snap. The moment when Kessara's heart would give up, or the moment she would hate him enough to break the bond. He expected a sharp pain, a sudden emptiness. Instead, he felt something else. Thump. A heartbeat. It wasn't his. His heart was frozen solid. This heartbeat was faint, rapid, and angry. "What?" Drakos whispered. He opened his eyes. He looked down at his chest. He could feel it. A tug. A pull. It wasn't fading. It was getting stronger. She's still fighting, he realized. Despite that, fear gripped him. If she was fighting, she was burning energy. If she was burning energy, the curse was feeding. He begged the empty air. "Just let it go, Kessara. Hate me. Please." But the bond didn't listen. In the quiet that followed, the sensation changed. It wasn't just a heartbeat anymore. It was an emotion. He expected grief. He expected sorrow. But what came down the bond was heat. Red-hot, blistering heat. Rage. She wasn't crying. She was furious. "She knows," Drakos breathed. His eyes widened. The gold began to swirl in his irises again. She knew he lied. She knew he loved her. And she wasn't accepting his sacrifice. "No," he groaned. "You stubborn little fool. Suddenly, the doors to the throne room burst open. It wasn't a guard. It wasn't the shaman, General Torin.
Sire!
Torin yelled. He was out of breath.
The warm cells! There's been a breach!
Drakos stood up. The ice on his armor cracked. What do you mean, a breach? The girl. Torin gasped. She's gone. She picked the lock. She knocked out the guard with a food tray. Gone. She hadn't just survived. She had escaped. Where? Drakos roared. Where did she go? The tracks. Torin hesitated. He looked terrified. Sire, the tracks lead out of the city, into the blizzard. Drakos felt his blood run, cold. Drakos asked, Yes, sire, north? North was suicide. North was death. But north was also where the mountain lay. The mountain where the frost witch lived. She's going to the source, Drakos whispered. She wasn't running away. She was going to kill the witch. She was going to fight the curse at its root. She was walking into a slaughter. Without warning, the alpha wolf took over. Drakos didn't think. He didn't plan. He leaped from the dais. He shifted in midair. Bones cracked. Fur sprouted. A roar tore from his throat that shook the palace to its foundations. He landed on all fours. A massive, black wolf with eyes of burning gold. He didn't wait for the guards. He didn't wait for orders. He turned and sprinted toward the balcony. He smashed through the remaining glass. He leaped into the night. Hang on, he pushed the thought down the bond. I'm coming. He ran into the storm, praying he wasn't too late.
The wind screamed like a banshee. Kessara stood at the very edge of the city. Behind her, the lights of the capital flickered in the storm. Ahead of her, there was only white, the mountain, the witch's domain. She was shivering so hard her teeth felt like they were going to shatter. Her skin was gray. The black veins on her arm had reached her neck. I can do this, she whispered, but her voice was swallowed by the gale. She looked down at her hand. She was gripping something tightly. A dagger. She had stolen it from the Temple of Solace on her way out of the city. It wasn't steel. It was sun, glass, a blade forged from volcanic sand and blessed by the summer priests. It glowed with a faint, orange light. It was the only thing in the world that felt warm. She held onto it like a lifeline. It burned her frozen palm. But the pain was good. The pain meant she was still alive. He thinks I'm weak, she hissed to herself. She remembered Drakos' face. The way he had looked at her in the bedroom. You're just an omega. He was wrong. Alphas were strong like oak trees. They stood tall against the wind until they snapped. But omegas were like willow branches. They bent. They twisted. They endured. She took a step forward. The snow was up to her knees. What's worse, her legs felt like lead pipes. The ice inside her was heavy. It dragged at her muscles, begging her to lie down. Just sleep, the cold whispered. It's so easy. No, Kessara shouted. She forced her foot to move. Then the other. She wasn't doing this for the crown. She wasn't doing this for the title. She was doing this because he had lied to save her. He was willing to be alone forever, just to keep her heart beating. That was the stupidest, most beautiful thing she had ever heard. You don't get to decide my fate, Drakos, she muttered. And you certainly don't get to be a martyr on my watch. Suddenly, a blast of wind hit her. It knocked her backward. She fell into a snowdrift. The cold bit into her face. She gasped. The air was too thin. Too sharp. She couldn't walk up this mountain. Not as a human. Her human body was dying. Maybe it was fate, pushing her to accept what she really was. She wasn't just a girl in a stolen cloak. She was a wolf. She closed her eyes. She reached deep inside, past the fear, past the ice, to the tiny, golden spark of her beast. It was weak. It was tired. Wake up, she commanded. Her wolf whimpered. It didn't want to come out into the cold.
Wake up!
Kessara roared internally. We fight or we die! In that moment, the spark flared. It wasn't a roar of dominance. It was a snarl of survival, and she let it happen. She let the change take her. It didn't hurt like usual. Usually, shifting felt like breaking bones. But now, it felt like relief. Her skin split, fur burst through thick and golden. Her face elongated, her teeth sharpened. She wasn't a girl anymore. She was a predator. The world looked different through wolf eyes. The blizzard wasn't just white blindness anymore. It was shades of gray and blue. She could see the wind currents. She could see the heat signature of a rabbit hiding in a burrow 10 feet away. Kessara shook her fur. She was small, much smaller than an alpha. She was a golden wolf, sleek and low to the ground. But that was her advantage. The wind howled overhead, searching for something tall to knock down. But she was low. She moved under the wind. She tucked the sun, glass dagger into the leather pouch strapped to her leg. She had tied it there before she shifted. She couldn't hold it in her paw, but she would need it at the top. She started to run. 4 legs were better than 2. Her paws were wide, acting like snowshoes. She moved across the top of the drifts instead of sinking into them. Left. Her instincts whispered, avoid the ravine. She listened. She weaved through the frozen trees. But the cold was still there. The curse hadn't vanished. It was a parasite riding on her back. With every step she felt the ice creeping into her joints. Her front left paw went numb. Then her tail. Keep moving, she told herself. Motion is heat. She thought of Drakos. She thought of the way he smelled. Ozone and power. She thought of the way his hands felt. Rough but gentle. She held on to that memory. She used it like fuel. She wasn't running away from him. She was running for him. Suddenly, a scent hit her nose. Rot, sulfur, old magic, the witch. She looked up. Through the swirling snow. She saw it. A cave mouth, glowing with a sick, green light. It looked like an infected wound in the side of the mountain. Fear spiked in her chest. The Frost Witch was a legend. A monster who had cursed a king. Kessara was just a librarian with a stolen knife. I can't do this, a voice in her head whispered. But then, she heard something else. Behind her, far down the mountain, a howl. It wasn't the wind. It was deep, bellowing. It shook the snow off the pine trees. A dub-o-o-o-o! Her heart skipped a beat. She knew that voice. She knew that soul, Drakos. He was coming. He had broken out of his palace, left his throne, and chased her into the storm. He hadn't let her go. Hope, bright and hot, flared in her chest. She wasn't alone. So, she bared her teeth. She dug her claws into the ice. She didn't wait for him to catch up. She needed to clear the path. With a low growl, the golden wolf surged forward, running straight into the green light of the enemy.
He was a tank made of muscle and shadow. Drakos tore up the mountain. He didn't run over the snow. He smashed through it. He was in his full alpha form, a massive black wolf the size of a warhorse. His paws hit the ground with the force of pile drivers. Thud, thud. He was breathing hard. Steam billowed from his jaws with every exhale, trailing behind him like smoke. He was terrified. Not of the witch, not of the storm. He was terrified of the silence at the other end of the bond. For the last hour, he could feel Kessara. He could feel her stubbornness, her rage, her heat. But now, she was fading. The solar heart she had was flickering, like a candle in a hurricane. No, he growled in his mind. Don't you dare go out. He pushed harder. His muscles screamed. He was running faster than he had ever run in his life. The bond was a physical rope pulling him upward. It tugged at his navel, She is close. He crested a ridge. The wind hit him full force, trying to throw him off the mountain. He dug his claws into the rock. He lowered his massive head and pushed. And then he saw it. The green glow, the witch's cave. And something else, a tiny, golden speck moving against the snow. It looked so small, so fragile, like a gold coin dropped in a snowbank. Kessara. She was limping. Her back leg was dragging. The ice was taking her. But she was still moving toward the cave.
Kessara!
He tried to shout, but it came out as a roar, a sound of pure, desperate warning. She paused. She looked back. Even from this distance, he saw her eyes. They weren't white anymore. They were blue, bright, defiant blue. She saw him. And instead of waiting, she turned back to the cave and ran faster. She was drawing the fire. She was engaging the enemy before he could get there. She is protecting me, he realized. The thought nearly brought him to his knees. She was dying, freezing and weak. And yet, she was trying to shield the Alpha King. Foolish girl. Brave, foolish girl. But he felt something else too. Pride. A fierce, burning pride that swelled in his chest. That was his mate. That was his queen. She wasn't a battery. She was a warrior. Before she could move another inch, the snow in front of her exploded. Two massive creatures made of ice and rock rose from the ground. Ice golems. They blocked her path, raising fists the size of boulders. Kessara skidded to a stop. She was trapped. Drakos didn't hesitate. He didn't slow down. He sped up. He channeled every ounce of anger, every ounce of fear, every ounce of love into his hind legs. He launched himself into the air. He soared over the ridge. A black missile aimed straight at the monsters threatening his heart. Hold on, little thief, he vowed. I'm bringing the thunder. As gravity took him, he opened his jaws and prepared to kill anything that stood in her way. Impact. King Drakos hit the first ice golem with the force of a falling meteor. Siraske. The sound was deafening. Ice shards exploded outward like shrapnel. The golem, a 12-foot monstrosity of frozen rock, didn't just break. It shattered. Drakos didn't stop. He was a blur of black fur and violence. He was the alpha, the apex predator. Get away from her, his mind roared. He landed on the snow, skidded, and spun around. The second golem raised a massive fist, aiming for the small golden wolf cowering near the ridge.
Roar!
Drakos intercepted the blow. He launched himself upward, clamping his massive jaws onto the golem's arm. His teeth, sharp as diamonds, crunched through the magical ice. Because of that, the golem stumbled. Its aim went wide. The fist smashed into the ground inches from Kessara, sending a spray of snow into the air. She was safe. For now. Drakos let go and dropped to the ground. He stood between her and the cave. He bared his teeth, a low, vibrating growl tearing from his throat. Run, he commanded her through the bond. Go left. Flank them. He felt her hesitation. She wanted to help. He barked. To make things worse, the cave mouth flared. Green fire spilled out onto the snow, and then she stepped out. The frost witch. She wasn't ugly. She was terrifyingly beautiful. Her skin was blue. Her hair was made of icicles that chimed in the wind. She floated inches above the ground, her eyes glowing with ancient malice. The puppy comes to play, she laughed. Her voice sounded like wind whistling through a graveyard. She raised a hand. Freeze. A beam of pure, concentrated cold shot toward him. Drakos didn't dodge. If he moved, the blast would hit Kessara behind him. So, he took it. He braced his legs. He lowered his head. The magic hit him chest on. Durium. It felt like being hit by a freight train made of dry ice. The air was sucked out of his lungs. His fur instantly frosted over. His muscles locked up.
Drakos!
He heard Kessara's scream in his mind. But he couldn't move. The ice spread rapidly. It covered his paws, anchoring him to the rock. It crept up his legs. It sealed his jaws shut. He was becoming a statue. The witch drifted closer, a cruel smile on her lips. 30 years I kept you cold, she purred. Did you think a little heat could stop me? She raised a dagger made of black ice. She aimed it at his exposed throat. Drakos watched her. He couldn't fight. He couldn't roar. But he wasn't afraid. His golden eyes shifted. He didn't look at the witch. He looked past her. To the shadow moving in the snow. The witch was so focused on the big, scary alpha. She had forgotten about the omega. And that was going to be her last mistake.
The witch had her back turned. Kessara was low to the ground. She was invisible against the snow. Her golden fur blending with the wind, blown drifts. She watched the witch raise the black dagger. She watched the ice creeping up Drakos' neck. Her mate was dying. No, she thought. Not today. She didn't growl. She didn't howl. She didn't make a sound. She shifted. It was mid-stride. One moment she was a wolf. The next, she was a woman, naked, shivering, desperate. But she wasn't empty-handed. In her right hand, the sun, glass. Dagger glowed like a captured star. The heat of it burned her palm, searing her skin. She didn't care. She needed the pain. The pain focused her. She lunged. She didn't aim for the back. She aimed for the source of the magic. "Hey!" Kessara screamed. The witch turned, surprised. "What?" Kessara didn't let her finish. She slammed into the witch. The cold radiating off the witch was agonizing. It felt like jumping into liquid nitrogen. But Kessara pressed forward. She jammed the sun-glass dagger into the witch's chest, right where a heart should be. "SSSCZ!" The sound was like water hitting hot oil. The witch shrieked. A sound that shattered the remaining icicles on the trees. "Yo!" the witch gasped, looking down at the glowing blade buried in her sternum. "You are?" "Nothing. Just a weak. I am an omega," Kessara gritted out through chattering teeth. "And we bite back." She twisted the blade. Light, blinding. Orange sunlight exploded from the wound. The witch threw her head back. Her blue skin began to crack. Beams of light shot out of her eyes. Her mouth, her fingers. Boom. The witch disintegrated. She didn't die. She shattered into a million snowflakes. The shockwave threw Kessara backward. She hit the snow hard. Silence. The wind stopped. The green fire in the cave winked out. Kessara lay there, staring at the sky. She was numb. She couldn't feel her legs. Is it over? Then, she heard it. Crack, crack, crumble. She rolled her head to the side. The ice statue of the black wolf was breaking. Chunks of ice fell away. Fur shook. A massive black head lifted. Drakos. He was alive. He shifted. The black wolf melted away, revealing the man. He was naked. He was scarred. He was shaking. He scrambled toward her on his hands and knees. "Kessara," he choked out. He reached for her. Kessara flinched. She expected the cold. She expected the pain of the curse transfer. But when his hand touched her cheek, it wasn't cold. It wasn't burning hot. It was just warm. Human warm. Drakos froze. He stared at his hand on her face. Then he looked into her eyes. The gold in his irises was soft, liquid. "You're warm," he whispered. Tears spilled down his cheeks. "You're not freezing." "Neither are you," she smiled weakly. A moment of pure disbelief followed. He pulled her into his arms. Skin to skin. Chest to chest. There was no shockwave. No glass breaking. No ice. Just the feeling of two hearts beating against each other. "We did it," he sobbed, burying his face in her neck. "You broke it." "We broke it," she corrected him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. The blizzard clouds above them parted. And for the first time in 30 years, a single ray of sunlight hit the top of the mountain.